Welcome to the Numeracy for Professional Purposes programme. This is the first lecture in the series and is about statistical data in research. In this lecture, we are going to be having a look at what statistical data actually is and why we use it. Firstly, turning to what we mean by statistics. The word statistics has a number of meanings, and that depends on the sphere in which the word is used. If we think about the context of research, what we're really talking about is about the science of data. The science that is statistics is used in research in a number of different ways. It is used in designing the methods for actually collecting data. It is used post-design in the actual collection and summarising of data, whether that's raw data and outputs. It is also used in testing for variance and data quality, and it's used for testing variables and the relationships between variables. The use of statistics in research closely follows what is known as the scientific method. The scientific method is a method by which we develop a theory as a starting point which is accepted or rejected by the data. The goal is to make decisions that are based on the information that we have gathered and interpreted. The theory of scientific method informs most quantitative techniques and approaches. And if we think about what that method actually is, we start at the top with defining the problem and formulating theories. We then move on to collect data. We then look at summarising the data, and we then interpret the results, trying to figure out what the data actually means and what it can tell us, and then present it. In social sciences, the scientific method has been developed from the key methodological approaches of positivism and empiricism. The positivist approach focuses on facts, and that is facts without any form of reference to any ethical judgments that are made about them. So it's focusing purely on what the data actually shows, and not about any judgment we might make about that data. Empiricism is another route from which we derive the scientific method, and that is really about observation. So it's about understanding that only knowledge that we can actually gain through experience is acceptable. So not things that we sit down and think about and we wonder and think, well, maybe this is what that means. No, we actually need to be able to observe it. We need to be able to observe data and concretely say whether something is true or whether it is not. This moves away from the metaphysical interpretations of the social world, which was really about the philosophical study of the nature of human beings. And that really contained very little that could be verified through scientific scrutiny. Using scientific logic enables the generation of an understanding of the social world that can be quantified and examined. The process of doing this is what we call deductive. So it's about generating logical conclusions from rational premises. So having had a look at what we mean by statistics, the next question is, why do we actually need to use them? Well, statistics can tell us much about us, about who we are, about the places in which we live, and what things we do in our lives, and our opinions on what we do. Statistics help us to provide an organised and scientific examination of the world that is around us. Statistics are a very valuable tool for people who want to look at the world in an organised and scientific way, so whether that be individuals or businesses or governments. And they really help us to make informed choices and decisions, and give us a scientific way to understand the cause and effect between differing phenomena. So it is really important to start becoming familiar with some of the basic concepts and techniques of statistics if we actually want to be able to do research well. So how do we gather statistical data? Well, quantitative data within research is generated through both primary and secondary means. Primary data is data that is observed or collected directly from first-hand experience, and we do this generally through either experimentation or through observational studies. When we're thinking about secondary data, we're really thinking about data that is published already or data that has already been collected either in the past or by somebody else. So it's secondary analysis of existing research. So having understood what we mean by statistics and why we use them, the next part is actually being able to think very critically about statistics. We have to be able to evaluate the accuracy of statistics so that we can spot the good ones from the bad ones. This is particularly so for anyone who is using statistics to make decisions, as decisions really need to be informed by accurate information and not what we call bad statistics. So we need to have a think about a number of different things. The first thing is thinking about the quality of the statistics. So that is how close the statistical estimates are to exact or true values. The second thing to think about is the reliability and validity of the statistics that are being used. So to do this, we need to think about the metadata and the quality of information that is being used to construct statistics. When we think about metadata, what we're really talking about is the data that describes the data that we're looking at. So it's the information that helps us to understand how that data is defined, what it's structured like, and how it's been administered. So if we think about the context of a survey, if we are evaluating the statistics that are generated from a survey, the first thing we need to understand is the metadata behind that survey. So we need to understand how that survey was constructed, how the questions were put together, what order they were put in, what population sample was used, what sampling frame was used, how that survey was administered, and those kind of things to be able to give us an idea of how reliable and valid the information that is generated from that survey is likely to be. It also gives us an understanding of whether there are any potential limitations for its use. So there may be some contexts in which a particular survey it's inadvisable to use because perhaps it doesn't actually cover what you think it does. Statistics also need to be free from political or policy decisions. They need to remain impartial and independent, and sometimes this can be difficult. Statistics themselves aren't necessarily bad. It is often the way in which they're used that can translate them into being what we call bad statistics. So sometimes you do see statistics that are used to influence policy decisions that perhaps aren't being used in the best possible way. So to be able to think critically about statistics means that we have to understand the fundamentals of how statistics are generated. And this is what this lecture series is going to aim to do. So it's going to take you through a way of understanding the fundamentals behind statistics for research. So we're going to have a look at the types of data that are available to us. We're going to have a look at understanding basic descriptive statistics. We're going to have a look at interpreting data, and then how we go about presenting data appropriately to different audiences.